In this video, I'll tell you about the worst idea Games Workshop has had in a while and why it's bad for Warhammer 40k. So I woke up Friday morning last week, as I generally do. And one of the first things I did is I picked up my phone and I started looking at news, gaming news and stuff like that, and emails and messages and such. And there was a bunch of different links to an article at the Games Workshop Warhammer community website, to a new article that had just gone up about the army building app, what they call Battleforge, in the Warhammer 40k, new app that came out about a month and a half ago or so. And some changes that were going to happen. Now, basically, long and short of it, it's going behind a paywall, which we knew. Like, when you launched that part of the app and it would show you the Battleforge stuff, there was a little yellow box at the top that says, hey, have a good time trying out this free trial. But it is a free trial and limited time and all that kind of stuff. So we knew that they were going to eventually put this behind a paywall. Now, it's a pretty useful little app. It's really good for actually building armies very quickly in 40k. And putting it behind a paywall is really dumb. It's a really dumb idea, and I'll get more to that in a bit. But generally, we mostly assumed, at least I did, I assumed it would be like they did with the old one where it's like $1 or $2 a month, and you could pay yearly and all that kind of stuff, and then that would cover it and all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that that's what they were going to do. But instead, this article explained that actually, no, they are locking it in with a Warhammer Plus subscription. So you have to be subscribing to Warhammer Plus to be able to use the army building app. And that's the worst idea, really. Army building is one of the kind of more difficult things to get your head around as a new player, right? As you're getting into a game, or even if you're just getting into wargaming in general, if you decided to come through the Warhammer 40k turnstile to get into wargaming, understanding how to build armies is difficult. A big portion of it is honestly just analysis paralysis. Should I take this? Should I take that? Like, what should I be taking? That kind of stuff. Now, this is not an issue with Combat Patrol, obviously, because with Combat Patrol, you buy a Combat Patrol box, you go online, and you download, here's the list, here's the way you should build it. This guy gets the gun, and this person gets that thing, and all that kind of stuff, and you just follow those instructions, and then you have yourself a working list, and you can play against other people who also have Combat Patrols. This was honestly a smart move, and I've talked about it, here on the channel as well. Pachow. But if you want to start going bigger, if you want to start going beyond Combat Patrol, then you need to build lists, right? And like I said, building lists can be very daunting to people. Now, a list builder, an army list builder for a war game like this, business-wise, it should be seen as a cost center and not a revenue center. Now, what does that mean? There are things that a business has to do so that they can make money. And there are different departments in most businesses. So, for example, a cost center is something like the IT department at a big company, right? They themselves generally don't generate revenue. What they do is they support the departments that do generate the revenue. If you decided, these IT people, they don't ever make us any money, and you get rid of them all, then all of a sudden the people who do make you money, the sales and stuff, they can't get their emails, and their printer doesn't work anymore, and all these other problems. The website doesn't work, so we can't do online sales. So you have parts of a business that are cost centers, and you have parts that are revenue centers. And the army list thing, for any game company out there, right, it drives long-term sales, right? It's something that you use to get you to buy more models. That's the way it works. Age of Sigmar app, when it first came out, it had a thing in there where you didn't have an army builder right off the bat, but at the very least, you could see the war scrolls right from the app. Anywhere that you were at, if you were interested and be like, I wonder if this army or this unit would synergize well with this thing I already have. You could look at the war scroll, let's say in the bathroom, where, I would sometimes be looking at apps and things like that on my phone, and find out, hey, this works really well with this thing that I already have. And then there was a buy button on the Age of Sigmar app. You could literally, from the toilet, buy some sort of model because you were looking at the stats and all that kind of stuff, and go from there. Having that information free to get at and making it like right up front drives sales. You want new players specifically who are kind of on the bubble about whether they're getting into your game or not, you want them to be thinking about your product even when they're not playing, even when they're not hobbying. They want, it's lunch break at work, and you want them to be thinking about like, well, how could I build this list? Or what if I change this out? That kind of stuff. And easy list building via an app is the smartest way. One-page rules, which you've probably heard of out there on the internet, they know this. To be fair, so do other people. Affinity has got a free list builder. Malifaux does. There's other companies that do this as well. But One-Page Rules, their free army builder thing, is honestly one of the best. It's web-based, but it also works on your phone, so they can update it very easily. When things are an app, then you have to go through a process through Android and through Apple to be able to make updates and do all that kind of stuff. When something is a web app, meaning it's basically a fancy web page, you can very quickly iterate without having to get Apple and Android and Google and other companies involved. You can just very quickly update things, and it's kind of a great thing. It's a little bit more cost effective, and it works on more phones sometimes too. So they have this great army builder, and they really easily, very easily could have put that army builder behind their Patreon paywall, right? Because they have this Patreon thing that they do. That's how they make money for the most part. But they didn't. They didn't put it behind the Patreon paywall. They know that making it very simple to make lists and thinking about the game in non-game times is a really smart move to get people really involved in your game and to keep them being interested. If I can look at the list building and see this is very cool and this is very interesting, there's a better chance with One-Page Rules I'm going to buy one of their full rule books, which are still like $5, or I'm going to join the $5 Patreon. If I want to 3D print stuff, I'm going to join the $10 Patreon. But if I've been basically blocked off from learning about their game too much, and specifically being able to very easily build army lists and things like that, if I've been blocked from that at the beginning, I'd be less likely to do it. So why is Games Workshop doing this? It seems to me that Games Workshop is trying to bolster the number of subscribers to their Warhammer Plus streaming service. Now, if you don't even know what Warhammer Plus is, that's fine. It is a streaming service that is put out by Games Workshop. It's $6 a month, which is, I think, a kind of pricey sort of situation, but I'll get to that. Or $60 a year if you pay annually. You basically get 2 months free, which is obviously the better deal. It includes, a bunch of animated cartoons. So if you're into that kind of thing, that's cool. It includes a bunch of video content that is like lore and painting and bat reps that should just be on YouTube, and Lord knows everybody else makes lore, painting, and bat rep videos out on YouTube, so it's not like you can't find that kind of thing. And then there's also the Vault, which is some of their older stuff, printed stuff, White Dwarves, other rule books and things like that, access to stuff that's out of print so that you can look at it. Mainly, I think, to get lore and stuff like that, because you're not usually looking for old rules that they don't use anymore, but the old lore stuff and things like that, I guess that's kind of cool if you're into that kind of thing. Warhammer Plus, in my opinion, is mostly attractive only to people who are already like really, really into the games and the lore, right? And play a lot and have been doing a lot and read a lot of books and do all that kind of stuff and dig the animations or whatever, all that kind of stuff. Or it is interesting to non-playing enthusiasts, we'll say. So enthusiasts who don't particularly play the game, but they love, again, the lore and the world and all that kind of stuff, and it just gives them more access to that stuff. So it's either to the people who are super deep into the playing and all that kind of stuff and the lore, or the people who are just into the lore. But it's really not something that's very interesting to newbies. I know that subscription services are all the rage amongst the corpo types these days. Currently, if I find a piece of software that I would like to buy, like graphic software, video editing software or whatever, and it doesn't basically only make itself available via subscription, I'm astounded. So yeah, I get it. The subscription stuff, that's what the suits really dig. But the thing is that's you're getting access to a piece of software, and hopefully it's getting updated pretty frequently. The downside is that if you use that software and then you stop paying for it, you can't use that software anymore, and your files that you made with that software don't work anymore, and there's all kinds of things like that. Here in this situation, though, the problem is that you are basically, it's like you have to pay to be able to watch advertising, right? Like the main goal of the stuff in Warhammer Plus should be this will drive sales. Like the company still makes miniatures, right? So the idea basically is that you should be learning about the lore and learning about, painting and learning about all these things so that you're more interested in buying more models. But they're trying to get you to do that, but also trying to charge you to learn about how you should buy more models. It's kind of strange. And, they're looking at Warhammer Plus. It's being currently seen as an extra revenue stream, when really, again, it should also be a cost center that supports more miniature sales. We have an attention-based economy these days, and when that attention is behind a paywall, we're less likely to pay attention. Games Workshop needs to remember they're a game company at the end of the day. I know it seems like they want to expand into being an entertainment brand. They've got the video games, and obviously they've talked about getting into like a television thing with Amazon and all that kind of stuff. We'll see if that ever happens. But they really seem to want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to make content to get you excited for the game so that you buy more miniatures from the game, but they also want to charge you for that content that gets you more excited to buy miniatures for the game. And when Warhammer Plus was honestly just shows and old articles and an exclusive model, I forgot about that. If you subscribe for a year, you get access to one of 2 different exclusive models. You can stop typing in the comments. I forgot about that, but it's there. But when that's what it was, Warhammer Plus was just shows, articles, old articles, the vault stuff, and the exclusive model, that wasn't so bad, right? Like, because you didn't have to buy it if you didn't want to, and you still don't have to buy it. But now, lumping the army builder into Warhammer Plus keeps that relatively important tool, the army builder, out of the hands of new players. Yes, I know, you can still build armies with pen and paper and all that. I get it. It's, if anything, honestly easier than it's ever been before, since they kind of simplified the force organization chart and stopped with all of the nickeling and diming with all the war gear costs and stuff like that. Well, this plasma pistol costs 10 points here, but on this guy it's only 5 points, and all of that stuff. Just taking that all out makes a lot more sense. But the app made it very simple to work on army ideas anytime that you had downtime. You're in line at the DMV, or during commercial breaks when you're sitting there on the couch watching TV. I mean, if you still watch stuff with commercials, I guess. Waiting for videos to render, like whatever. The ease of use is what keeps the game kind of front and center and easily accessible in your mind, and it makes it more likely that you'll buy more models. When you put roadblocks in front of people who are trying to think about your game, then they don't think about your game, and they don't buy models, and they are more likely to stop playing. And when I say stop playing, I mean stop playing war games altogether. For a lot of people, Warhammer of some flavor is how they get into the wargaming hobby, but then after a while they kind of start playing some other stuff like that. But instead, you put that roadblock out there, and then they're just going to go back to things that are a lot easier, like video games, many of which have free apps to help you better play the video game, I might add. I highly doubt that the suits at Games Workshop will change their minds on this. I mean, even to just offer like a non-Warhammer Plus subscription price, like again, like $1 or $2, just so, so maybe, I guess, if they're not going to do that and you got to go with Warhammer Plus, and if you're not interested in Warhammer Plus, you got to try something else, right? Now, you could check out Battle Scribe. It's been out there for a long time, but it's a bit of a mess right now. As far as like the owner of the app has been kind of on again and off again, MIA for several years now. Some people thought that he passed away potentially during COVID, but there has been some kind of like, communication and everything, and that's not the case, thankfully. But still, it's difficult to kind of use at this point, and the data sheets get updated, but it's hard to say. Anyway, is there an app that you like to use out there for building Warhammer 40,000 armies? Let me know in the comments down below. So far, I still think that 10th edition Warhammer 40,000 is a net positive. Combat Patrol is a great way to get new players and lapsed players back into the game. The streamlined rules, reducing the amount of stratagems, making the game move faster, all that kind of stuff. The downloadable indexes. If you remember, you had to buy the indexes back in 8th edition. When they went from 7th to 8th, they ripped off the Band-Aid and all the codices were null and void, and now they have these new indexes, and you had to buy those books. At least with 10th, you could download the cards and stuff like that instead of, and then it was easier. That all being said, this kind of army builder as part of Warhammer Plus thing might be the first sign of Games Workshop getting back into their kind of old ways, right? And it's not a great look for them. It's another example of like short-term corporate gains potentially wrecking long-term health of the entire game. So what do you think? Are you going to sign up for Warhammer Plus now that it'll be the only way to get access to the army builder, the whatever they call it, Battleforge? Have you been thinking about Warhammer Plus, but now this is the thing to finally kind of push you over the edge and, pull the trigger? Or is there a different app you prefer instead? If you've had Warhammer Plus, did you think it was worth it? Let me know down in the comments below. If you liked this video, hitting the like button will increase the amount of tiny fireworks in your life, and it helps the channel out as well, which I appreciate. Subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.